I really enjoy talking about. And many people don't want to scratch the surface of these things, but they need
When
to be
you're
talked
grounded
about.
in facts, when you're grounded in facts, you don't really look left or right.
Absolutely.
Just straight ahead. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the way it's supposed to go, And but sometimes I understand, sometimes people fear fear what others may say and fear
Repercussions.
reprisals, yeah. And so, I understand, but
That's why, which is a reasonable thing, because self-preservation is a natural instinct.
yes.
But you have to put yourself in a position where you are kind of insulated.
Absolutely. And something, that's a great word. And I do a lot of things in my life. After certain things happen to you, you have to guard yourself.
Indeed.
And the best way to guard, is to know. Did you realize that, right? The best way to guard is to gain knowledge and so yeah, I really like that.
For example, it has been said that you can know who rules you.
Yes.
If you are afraid to criticize. Yeah. Yes. And that's why, Mutty Perkins is many things. But one of the things about Mutty Perkins that I admired is that man didn't even take electricity from the public grid. He got his home with solar, he had his water tanks and all those kind of things. So
is that right?
Cut off him light or cut off the water off his pipe. That type of thing.
Yeah, man. So I was here a while ago, I was scrolling through Facebook, and I don't even know how much I love music. I love to play music. I love to sing.
Yes, you had that session thingy that you did.
Yeah, man. And I was just scrolling through. I saw one of my favorite acts. His name is Leroy Sibbles. You remember Leroy Sibbles?
Oh yes.
Oh, from the Eptones. And
yeah, man, he's playing in my backyard, I think 2 weeks from now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Man, I love, I think that he has the coolest stage presence in the world. He doesn't stress. He just goes up and he does his thing, and whatever comes out, people enjoy it. I like that. I like that.
I saw him, or I took in a concert of his at the Pegasus a few years back, just before the pandemic, when Jem Myers and friends.
Yes.
And he had a stint there, a man just came on and went into it with his guitar,
Yeah,
man, his book of rules and those
book
things.
Of rules.
Yes.
Yeah, I love him.
And he's versatile, man, and deep. Very
he plays
the drum.
He plays the drum. Yeah. He plays the bass guitar. He plays the horn. He plays everything. He's really good.
Yes.
And the ultimate singer. Really, really nice.
Oh, yes. Now that you have underscored this, I'm going to have to go because he's going to be in Port Antonio. Can't let that pass me up at all.
No, if you really love, he does mostly rock steady early reggae music, right? So when he can start from the mid 60s and drop you in the mid 70s and you're sweet. It's really, really nice to just listen to him.
Yes.
Oh, man, really good, really good. All right, so this is Leo Gilling, and I have with me this week on the hot seat. we don't even really call the show any name. We just call it whatever comes to it. It's Leo Gilling and Paul Ivey on a Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock generally, but this evening we may have a special guest, so we started a little bit late to accommodate his time, and we're not going to say who he is until if he comes on. I'm going to go ahead and give him a WhatsApp chat to see if he will come on for real. If he comes on, it will be a lot of fun. Good evening, everybody. And this is where we talk about the real stuff. We don't just gab. We don't just talk just for talk's sake. As Doc says, he said, as long as you have the good stuff, the facts behind you,
evidence.
The evidence, you don't have to worry, right? And Indeed. So this evening and every evening when we're here, we have the facts to back us up. We talk about we lay the facts down and we talk about them and give our thoughts. Today, we are going to be, touching a little bit on something that's going on and around. I told him in the last minute, but I know he's really good at stuff like this. The constitutional reform, what's going on, the Privy Council, the CCJ. Remember that CCJ?
Yes, versus the Privy Council debate.
Yes.
Ongoing debate, yes.
I want to talk about them things there. I want to know, let me start you off really quickly. Why are we looking at constitutional reform? Why?
Well, after 61 years of independence, and my formulation is not really quite independence. I put it this way, self-governing. After 61 years as a self-governing country, yes. And we do not have a constitution that was formulated by the people for yes. the people, yes. It is high time, because our 1962 constitution is actually an order in council of the UK Parliament. And that's what has been our constitution since 1962. As there's a popular saying going about now, time come for us to look at our constitution and reform it so that we can put ourselves really in charge of ourselves. As my friend Kabu Mahat Karu has formulated it, let us be in charge of ourselves. So that's kind of like the motivation. In addition to that, there are some colonial legacies that are imprinted in the Constitution, the current one, which needs to be expunged. It is also the case that our governance system, in terms of some of the provisions that are in the existing Constitution, they have not served us well. And so there is indeed the need for reform as we go into the next 60 years, if you will. So it's a relic, in a sense. It's a relic, and some of the provisions are actually outdated. They have not kept up with the times. We really need to move away from being a constitutional monarchy. We really need to move away from being a constitutional monarchy and to get rid of the British monarch and become a republic, as has been mooted for quite some time now. Yes. So yes, the need exists and the rationale is very much there.
So where are we going with this? We're going to a republic. Is that really highly researched? Why a republic and not another Westminster model or a model like the Westminster? Why republic?
Well, certainly the matter, if we're gonna cut ties with the constitutional monarch, then certainly we wouldn't want another variation of that. The coronavirus has showed us what the variants do. So we want a variation of that. We want a clean slate where we have a republic and our own head of state and our own governance arrangement. No halfway.
But you're not saying where the government is going, though, because based on my reading, the government is not getting rid of the king being the head of state. Am I right?
No. What they're saying is that they will remove the king as head of state, but they will want to have a ceremonial head of state locally, and not an executive head. And not only that, they're saying that in this phase, that they will remove the monarch, but still retain the Privy Council.
That's the point. Okay, I missed that point. Yeah.
Yes.
So how does that make sense?
Well, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. Because how are you going to say we are cutting ties with the British monarch, but at the same time, we're going to utilize their courts as or their court as our final appellate court. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's say it makes sense. I want you to put yourself into the author's role right now, and let's see what comes up. What would be the benefit of keeping the Privy Council when you have already changed your complete model? What is the benefit? Can you think? Think like the authors for a minute.
You're asking me to do an impossible task. It is cognitively impossible for me to do. This is a classic example of a cognitive dissonance.
Right.
You can't make this stuff up. Because here it is, on the one hand, we have our Caribbean Court of Justice. Jamaica is actually paying for the court. And we have subscribed to the business, the first part of it, the interpretation of the Treaty of Sagaramas and so on and so forth. But we have not subscribed to the appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ, which we're actually paying for. So in other words, we have a substitute court that we have established, but we are not using it.
Hold on. I don't think it's a substitute. I think it's a primary court, not a substitute.
Well, yes. What I mean is that we have an alternative.
Yes.
Yes. Which we are not using it. And on this, in the same breath, lords in the UK are telling us that we are loitering. Lord Phillips, the first Nicholas Phillips.
Loitering. Explain that term for me. What do you mean by loitering?
Well, I'm going to explain. Lord Nicholas Phillips was the first president of the UK Supreme Court, said in 2009, I believe it was, that there are cases from the ex-colonies that are now members of the Commonwealth. Cases from these countries are consuming too much of their time, and they have established a decent court called the CCJ. He said that.
But just a couple of days ago, I saw where the court actually said that both the CCJ and the Privy Council. So what I gather is that the Privy Council is the one kind of holding our hands and tying us up a little bit, because they're saying that both the CCJ and the Privy Council can work together, they can coexist.
No. So having said what he said in 2009, Lord Phillips, Belize took their cue and said it was on account of what he said that they established their own apex court in Belize.
Right.
Well, here's what's happening now. Because the UK left, this is a theory, because the UK has left Brexit and doesn't have the clout that it previously had as a British Empire.
The whole land.
They are now turning in the opposite direction and trying to hold on to what's left of their empire through the Commonwealth. And also now the Privy Council, which is why Lord Robert Reid in November just last month, I think it was the 23rd, he wrote a letter to the editor of the Gleaner saying that, oh, we are quite prepared to continue to hear cases from the Commonwealth countries here at the Privy Council. So it was really a kind of rear guard effort, in my view, to try to retain some type of clout.
But our government seemed to be okay with that. They seem to be amenable to that position, isn't it?
The thing about it is that there is something that is befuddling about this JLP government. Historically, in relation to the Privy Council. So, for example, former Prime Minister, late Prime Minister Edward Seaga, said that the Privy Council is the only place from which Jamaicans can be assured of pure justice.
Wow.
That type of thing. So they have this, and then remember, he was among some of the persons who took the matter to do with replacing the Privy Council with the CCJ to the Privy Council to say that the bills were not properly, they were not constitutional, because you couldn't replace the deeply entrenched Privy Council with an unentrenched court, the Caribbean Court of Justice. And the Privy Council ruled, and self-servingly ruled to say that you needed to entrench the CCJ, and the only way that can be entrenched is via a referendum. So there's always been antipathy, if you will, on the part of the JLP as a party against severing ties with the Privy Council.
But so let me ask you this. Let's say, I thought Barbados removed itself from the monarchy.
Yes.
And also, but they still retain their Commonwealth status. Is that possible?
Yes, they retain their Commonwealth status and also has a Governor General, a ceremonial head of state. But at the very minimum, it's an homegrown head of state. It's not somebody who is there as a representative of the monarch over there in the UK. It is their own ceremonial head of state that they have.
And that's an appointed position.
Yes, yes.
It is. Okay,
appointed locally, if you will, in the
we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that, but we have a guest that we wanted to have on the show for a while, but it's really good that he jumped in now. I want to welcome Senator Crawford, Senator Damion Crawford. Welcome, Senator Crawford.
Hi, brother. How are you doing? Good afternoon.
I believe you know Dr. Paul Ivey.
Yes.
Greetings, Senator Crawford. I saw you about a couple of weeks ago down in my hometown. Your turn.
Walking and talking and meeting the people.
Yes, in my born ground, as they say, you know, I grew up in the hands of people like Bev Jobson and others like that, you know.
Okay. Ms. Jobson is still active and fighting.
Yes, indeed, you know, a real stalwart.
Yes.
Welcome. We have so many things to talk about. This evening, I put him on the hot seat. I put Dr. Ivey on the hot seat talking about constitutional reform. But, you know, last week we started a conversation about crime and education. And boy, was it a hot topic. We really needed you to come in and just draw us up as you were, as you may say. We see how education is serve two purposes. It a little of it can cause crime. Enough of it can reduce crime. Enough of it can cause crime. It is so entwined into who we are as a people. But we have a problem in Jamaica, a problem of being one of the major countries in the world that has crime at the forefront. We are somewhere between 1 and 4 at any point in time in our days, and it kind of for the diaspora, it's something that scares us. It's something that make us want to not come home, or if we come home, we're doing things that are not necessarily what we want to do. We're scared of going to different places. I just want to start the conversation out so that you can give us your thoughts about what the status of crime in Jamaica should it be something that diaspora should be afraid of to come home? Should be something that we should be very cautious and change the way we do things. Tell us, give me, open it up for us.
All right. Well, first of all, as you know, we are in the Western hemisphere. And the dominant ideology in the Western hemisphere is the market economy. So whenever we are having a conversation of impact, it must be made within the context of the type of economy that is dominant. Meaning resources are directed by demand and supply. So that market economy says that consumption, which is the demand side, and the driver of economic activity. Demand is a driver of economic activity. It is not supply. It is once the demand exists, then business interests will seek to supply. So the demand is based on what is called a Norman equation. And Norman says that demand is based on value, which is a comparison of benefits and outlay. The benefits are the numerator, and the outlay is the price, the future cost, and the risk. What crime does is that crime increases the risk component of the value equation. And when it increases the risk component of the value equation, it simultaneously drives down the price component of the value equation. So if you go downtown, the same shoes has to be sold for cheaper than the same exact shoes uptown because risk must be subsidized by price. And the same house in Tivoli Gardens must be cheaper than the same house in Mona because risk must be subsidized by price. So what we end up having is that almost every output of the Jamaican economy, in particular where persons must be present, and tourism, our main earner, for example, or returning residents, purchasing homes, are depreciated. We have a downtown destination, a downtown country because the price must subsidize the higher risk. So if you have a 10 price and a 2 risk in Barbados, in Jamaica, because you have a 10 risk, you have to compete with a 2 price. So you find Bahamas and those other countries are getting higher returns from visitation, higher prices on housing, etc., than in Jamaica. It goes further because it equally impacts the individual. And so you hear people saying they have to write an incorrect address on the job application. Again, because if I'm paying the two of you the same money, the person who's from a crime community is perceived to be of higher risk. So therefore, the only way I hire him is if he's willing to accept less pay. And so that too becomes a problem. So generally, our economic activity, which then generates our standard of living, is going to be affected by the risk increase created by the Norman equation and the criminal activity that is happening. So it is a reason for great concern because it depreciates every single asset and every single product that Jamaica produces.
But you're not saying though that the place where the shoe is lesser, let's downtown, is the cause of the high crime. You're just saying it's a result.
So risk. There are different types of risk. Physical risk. So because people think downtown is more dangerous, then downtown must subsidize the risk by selling the shoes cheaper. Because people think that the store is going to be carrying the authentic brand and downtown might not carry the authentic brand. Then the risk of it being fake must be subsidized with price. So generally, once there is risk, price must subsidize it for the equation to be held in equilibrium. And what crime is doing is to create higher risk. So you'll find, for example, that all right, there was a research done after 9/11 about people if they're willing to travel, and almost 90% of people immediately after 9/11 said no, we're not willing to travel. And then the second question, would you travel if there was a 60% discount? And the reverse happened, moved to 60% to say yes, they'll travel. And then they said, would you travel if it was a 90% discount and 100% say yes? So while they still had the fear of the plane and the Al Qaeda and all of that, the price became cheaper. Them say, yo, I risk it.
I hear you. I've always wanted to ask, and you can jump in anytime, Doc. I always wanted to ask this because we talk every day about crime plan. Where is the plan? Why isn't something executed? Why so much SOEs on? Is there a crime plan? That's the first question. Is there a crime plan, and what is it?
Not that I've seen. I've not seen it because there are certain, for example, if you ask me, is there a dog? Then I'm going to use certain things to say, yes, there's a dog, how it look, how it sound, how it act. So there are certain realities that a plan must have. For example, we don't even have an objective. What is the objective, measurable objective of this approach that they're taking, whatever approach it is? Is it that we want to reduce by 5% a year, 10% a year? We want to be at 300 murders maximum in 10 years. There's no objective. So if there's no objective, that's the first thing that negates it being a plan, because it don't walk like a duck. It don't talk like a duck. It don't look like a duck. So why are we still saying it's a duck, right? So there's no objective. Now, once there's no objective, then strategy and tactics cannot be measured and cannot be analyzed. So if we say we want to reduce it by 10%, a different strategy will have to be employed than if we said 50%, or if we said 5%. So the simple fact that there's no objective creates a problem. The second reality is that a crime plan is different than a criminal plan. A criminal plan is a component of a crime plan. So how do we treat the current criminals is only a component of a crime plan. Now, all the things that I see coming forward is a method, a strategy to punish the criminals. So you say, oh, we're going to give them minimum sentences for having a gun, 15 years. We're going almost in a year now since that has been passed, and we don't see any reduction in the desire for guns. Now we're going to say if you commit a murder, we're going to give you, I think, is 50 years or 40 years. Now those things are palatable to the populace because they're distressed by criminals. So they're saying, yes, punish them. But the only way of punishment can serve as a deterrent for criminal activity. Because the punishment don't serve as a deterrent, then it's too late, you know. If the punishment, remember the punishment come after the crime. So in this case, the punishment come after the murder. So if we stop at the punishment, then the murders will remain the same. The punishment must go further than just the action must go further than a punishment and become a deterrent. The only way it can become a deterrent is if it has the 3 S's. The first S is the surety of punishment. The second is the swiftness of punishment. And the third is the severity of punishment. We have only focused on the severity. But if you look at the surety of punishment, because we have a clear-up rate of less than 60%, so let us just for maths say 50%. Clear-up means a case that the police have carried to laying a charge. So you say, all right, I think Damion Crawford did it, and we have enough evidence to charge it. So we have a clear-up rate of 50%. And then we have a conviction rate of less than 30%. Now remember, that is off the 50%. So therefore, if we only carry 50% to court, and of those that we carry to court, only 30% get convicted, it means that only 15% of all crimes are punished through our courts. That's one of the reasons why personal retaliation is so big in Jamaica, because the vast majority will not go. So if there's that unlikely probability of punishment, 15% is 1 in 6, approximately 1 in 6. Yes. Yeah. 1 in, no, it's 1 in 8, 15 and 15, 30 times 3. So that's 1 in 6. So therefore, if out of every 6 murder, 1 will get convicted through our court system, or whatever. So the fact of the matter is there's no surety. And even that 15%, it takes 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, many times for them to be convicted. So there's no scrutiny.
All right, here's my first.
I thank you for that. That's a great delivery of exactly what I would think that our problem is. But go ahead and a solution.
Yeah. Well, you want me to come in now?
Yeah, man, come in. Yes.
Right. Here's my perspective. Senator Crawford has painted a very accurate perspective on the whole situation. I have often used two analogies: the internal combustion engine and the human body. The internal combustion engine consists of a number of different systems: the cooling system, the power system, the exhaust system, and all of those working together to get the motor vehicle to move and to operate. It's the human body, likewise, as a set of systems: circulatory system, respiratory system, excretory system, musculatory system, etc., etc. I don't think it is that we don't have a crime plan. And I think we should probably say an anti-crime plan. Because we have heard mention of Plan Secure Jamaica on July 7, 2019. Commissioner Anderson was a year and 4 months into his office at the time. He sat down with Gleaner senior writer Erica Virtue, and he set out what he called his 7 planks for crime management. And these 7 planks mirrored the strategic review of the JCF that was done in 2008. And these were the planks that he said were part of his plan: crime reduction and control, improving public safety and citizen security, organizational restructuring and capacity building, enhanced staff welfare, enhancing professional standards, efficiency of the JCF through technology, communication and public engagement. That's what he said was the 7 planks of his plan to tackle crime in Jamaica. When we listen to Senator Crawford's equations and the risk factor and how it suppresses value in the society, the question arises, and we have heard studies about the level of GDP that have been suppressed by the high levels of crime, suppression of investments, and so on and so forth. Why haven't we as a country come together to treat this malady that is having such adverse effects on our prospects for prosperity? And it has been, EPOC has been lauded as a model that has been used to turn around the economy and put it on the footing that we are on today. On August 3, 2020, they went off to the conference center downtown and they signed this memorandum of understanding, the government and the opposition and other private sector leaders, civil society people, and so on. And they dubbed it CMOC to mirror the kind of framework within which EPOC operated, the Crime Monitoring and Oversight Committee, chaired by Lloyd Distant of the Chamber of Commerce. And the question for me is this, and my disappointment surrounds the fact that this CMOC has not lived up to its expectations. It has actually been abandoned by the government, as a matter of fact. The Minister of National Security said that it was something that was done for just the election that was coming up in 2020. And that is terribly disappointing for me, because that represented a model, I do believe, that we could have used to collectively try to tackle this national malady that is crime.
Well, I thank you for that. That's a great delivery also. I like the fact that you said that they have a crime plan. So there's a plan, and everything that we do in our country in terms of social, cultural, all of these kind of that we do is a part of our crime.
Let me cap it. So I was saying now, and I use the analogy of the internal combustion engine and the human body.
Yeah,
so
I wondered why you didn't go.
Gotten them the different parts working together. That's what is actually missing. So to the point Senator Crawford made about the 3 S's. So you catch a man and you give him 100 years in prison. That is the severe punishment part of it. But the man is in the prison running his organization outside just the same. What is the point of all of that? So you're fixing one side, looking at one side of it, but you're not looking at the whole.
But I still don't think that we have. I think what we should be looking at is a strategy rather than a plan. If you may listen, I always look at, though New York, the strategy that they used was debunked, though it was parts of it became unconstitutional. I do believe that strategy brought down crime tremendously. It's a part of the overall crime plan, but it was a strategy that they used. They use some kind of policing strategy, and they come up and they attack the minor offenses and impact the major offenses. And over time, over 15 years, murder rate went down tremendously. I mean, there were in 1992, the number of murders in New York was 2,600. In 2013, there was only 300. And it's all as a result of the strategy that they use. So I'm wondering if we can look at our populace, our country, look at how crime is committed, look at how the people live, and find a theory that would work, and come up with a strategy based on that theory, and make it and execute and see what happens. But I don't know that we are doing any such thing. Senator.
Yeah, well, I see no evidence of that. I have seen where things perceived to be politically exciting, where the populace might buy into and celebrate, are being put forward, even if those things are likely to be counterproductive. One of the things, for example, as I said, is the minimum sentence. Even the Chief Justice recently came out.
Mandatory, yes.
Minimum mandatory. The Chief Justice is saying that almost the vast majority of pleas have dried up, meaning people who used to plead guilty and be given a shorter sentence are now not willing to plead, because if 15 years is the minimum for a gun, might as well see what the jury has to say. And we don't have the prisons, because the prisons are currently overcrowded. So if the average stay is extended, that should also lead to greater levels of overcrowded realities. We haven't corrected that to satisfy. But we also, as I've said before, haven't improved. We still don't have Jamaica Eye, which is the cameras throughout the country. Every government agency by now should have been a part of the Jamaica Eye. People get murdered at the clinic, a government facility that don't have cameras. People should be getting tax breaks to import cameras and put on their homes if they're willing to sign in to Jamaica Eye. St. James, which is a hotbed now, have less police than it did in 2016. Less members of the force assigned to the St. James Parish than it did in 2016. And they need 24 cars, of which they have 10. So even responding to criminal activity is more difficult. Processing the crime scene, they don't have the bus in St. James to immediately go and process the crimes. So I have seen nothing to suggest to me that we're seeking to prevent future criminals in any way. We have not sought as a country to reduce the crime of greed by putting in systems in place, the crime of need, I'm sorry, putting system in place that the lowest rung of society can survive as human beings without participating or without being encouraged to participate in criminal activity. The sources of crime continue wantonly to be promoted without great targeting of extortion, of scamming, of job running. Outside of the US activity, we don't have real targeting or persons dedicated to that. And I really don't see what the intent is. So I don't find that those things, the necessary tenets exist.
The bits and pieces, the parts of the whole operating in an harmonious fashion. So, for example, the forensic certificates that are to be available for cases. The Chief Justice threw out a whole set of scamming cases the other day because the forensic certificates were not available and so forth. So everywhere you go in the system, you find dysfunctionalities of the different parts that should be working in harmony. What we do not have is this. You talk about strategy and the theory that is at play, Leo.
Yes.
A fixity of purpose and consistency of doing things. We do things to, like, the flavor of the month, to appease sentiments and emotionalism, but we're not consistent with what we do. Take, for example, P-Step. You remember when P-Step was launched with these bright colored neon bikes?
Give us an idea what P-Step is. Give us an idea what P-Step is.
The Public Safety and Transport branch, I think, Public Safety and Transport branch of the JCF.
Okay.
So they relaunched it, replacing the traffic division. And this was about restoring order in public spaces and in the transportation sector. And they had these nice, bright colored neon bikes and whatever and so forth. Big news, big splash, big PR. And we just go back like an elastic band. You stretch an elastic band and you go back to where you were initially. So we're not consistent in what we do. So as to the theory, I've always argued that what we need to do is to consistently enforce the laws that we have on the books. We don't need any new laws. No. Yesterday, I was looking at the Town and Communities Act. This is an old piece of law, probably from the 40s or even 40s would be the colonial times. But what it set out, and there's also the Public Order Act, it set out the kind of standards and things that persons can do or don't do in communities and so forth. And I've held the view that if we enforce the little things, you speak about the New York City, and of course the broken windows theory there, ran into some challenges and so forth. But at least you saw some results that came from it. I'm arguing for the consistent enforcement of the laws. No youth, person, anybody in Jamaica should feel that it is possible without consequence to drive out of their yards with a motorcycle without a helmet. And you see it up and down the place. You just see it up and down the place and so forth. That's just one example. But if you go from Morant Bay to Negril Point, I've said this over and over, what you will see is lawlessness, the entire swath of the island from east to west, not being enforced.
So Senator made that point about the conviction rate, right? One thing that we seem to forget when we are out extending sentencing and making sentences stricter and more stringent is that the only thing that majority of the people respond to is deterrence. Majority of the country operate, or they fear one way or the other that if they commit a crime that they will get caught. If they don't have that feeling going out on the road, like if the conviction rate is 15% in Jamaica, the conviction rate in the United States is 86%. Conviction rate in China is 99%, that kind of thing. And so what happened is when people walk out of their homes and think that they are going to, well, they're not going to think that they're going to commit a crime, because the possibility of being caught, even just by thought, exists. And that's the deterrence. It's not the actual sentencing that prevent people from committing a crime. You see, you drive down the street on Fort Lauderdale, and you see a police car up ahead. And the first thing you think, God, me black, God, they will catch me, may I go fast, right? Well, when you drive up to the car, you already slow down from 75 miles per hour and down to 30 miles per hour. And when you drive up to it, there's nobody in the car. The car is just there with a light. Deterrence, right? And so people don't know that there's no police officer there, but they just put the car there. But you think, just by virtue of seeing the car, that you're gonna, when I see a police car, well, most people in Jamaica see a police car, what do they think? They probably think, let me race them, you know, that kind of thing. So there's a difference. Majority of the country has to respond to something called deterrence. And the only thing that's going to get us there is if we increase our conviction rate to like 70, 80, 90%. And then people will start saying, and that's why that broken glass, those broken windows theory worked. That's why it worked in New York, because they prosecuted you for double parking. You have to go to court. They prosecuted you for jumping a turnstile. They prosecuted you for just for having your light broken at the back of your car. That kind of thing. You go to court and you go through the whole process of going there, and then you either do 2 days in prison or pay $500. But you've already gone through the whole process. Nobody wants to go to court. Nobody wants to go to the system. Yeah. So that's what the whole idea is now. Having the whole country think that if they commit a crime, they will they will pay for it. If they don't think so, anything goes. And that's what we're up against.
But that's what we're having. We're basically having anything goes.
Yeah.
That's what we're having, you know. I recall the Prime Minister saying that he had given the commissioner a charge to restore order to halfway tree. That has not happened. And it is the same in every town center that we go into now. It's about psychology, the psychology of deterrence, psychology 101, consequences regulate behavior. I have said, and I've thought and wrapped my mind around this. The people in Singapore are no more inherently law-abiding than Jamaicans. They're not inherently. It is just a question of, in those societies, the rules are enforced. And the thing we must appreciate, you know, I'm not this kind of person who's saying, well, get the big stick and just go and hit everybody over their heads. The point is this: when humans came out of the caves and out of the trees and agrarian societies, and humans started to organize themselves into societies, there were rules for the common good of everyone. And a society has to operate on the basis of rules, because it has been said that if we could rely on the virtues of men, there would be no need for laws. And where we are failing in Jamaica, and I'm saying is that we have to go back to first principles, put in place an orderly society, because the psychology of it, the broken windows, is this: If you go to a place and you see everybody throwing garbage there, you're likely to throw garbage there as well. The point has also been made that if you look in traffic sometimes, the traffic is backed up, okay? People are there waiting. One man takes to the soft shoulder, and before you know it, 3 and 4 other persons are taking to the soft shoulder and going around there like that. So what you see is that the one breeds other examples of bad antisocial behavior and so forth. And if we go back to first principles in Jamaica, this punishment model that we are prosecuting and these serial SOEs, we have seen that they're not working. In fact, the miscreants are getting even more bolden and brazen and bold-faced. It's just working.
Senator, I need your thoughts on the SOE, sir.
Again, just evidence. The worst thing a government can do is nothing. So when the government don't know what to do, it can't stand there and look around because the people would realize that they don't know what to do. So they have jumped to do anything. Now, after 5 years, there should not be a quarrel if this thing works or it don't work. I mean, the numbers have shown that we basically have gone up every year, and this is one of the highest sustained periods of high levels of very, very high levels of criminal activity. So I mean, just today there was about 3 murders in St. James that have a state of emergency. So there's no debate that this don't work. But the Prime Minister have also shown a relative disrespect for the intent of our laws, because it was never intended that he would be able to subvert the parliament and just call it every 2 weeks, as he sees fit. It was the intent that there would have been some level of protection by having to come to Parliament and seek the Parliament's agreement, and he has decided to not act in that way. So generally, I think that the thing has failed, but it is the government's effort to continuously suggest that they are doing something.
Is that what they call hotspot crime strategy?
No, hotspot don't. The state of emergency has removed some of your rights. All the other aspects can happen as is. So you can have hotspot policing, you can have curfews, all of that. It is the ability to arrest a man and to lock him up without habeas corpus, etc. That the state of emergency allows. But simply hotspot policing is a tool naturally and available to the police force.
Actually, I've been sarcastic there, but yeah, I do know. I'm just saying that it seemed like that's what they're trying to use in this sense.
The public that hotspot policing needs a state of emergency.
But let's look at history. What does history tells us in terms of this approach of, the heavy-handedness? Remember, we had the Suppression of Crimes Act. This was enacted in 1974, Suppression of Crime Act. It remained in force for 20 years and was repealed in 1994. And what did we see happen? From the enactment of that act up to the time when it was repealed, the crime had been increasing. So it didn't work. And then we've had the gun court, and we have had all these special squads. Remember all these special squads with all kinds of different names and so on and so forth. And they have not worked over the years. So there's the evidence that this doesn't work. You talk about theory, Leo. What about community policing as another one of the strategies that, has been put in place in other jurisdictions? We have given lip service to community policing, but we have not allowed it to work and play itself out in terms of how it is to be done in terms of the theoretical underpinnings of community policing.
But I wouldn't want to give anybody the idea that just to implement a strategy that you're going to see immediate effect. Because there's something to say about the mentality of a people that has gone through this kind of laxing or relaxing of the laws, and how they feel about, you know, themselves and the law. Because I am thinking that if you come up with a strategy, unless it is very stringent, it's very hardcore type strategy, people are, the attitude of people have changed over the years. Now, what is it today versus what it was 20, 30 years ago? And so the people have to also know and believe that they have a part to play in reducing crime, and not just the police, because we can, or the JCF. Because if we depend only on the JCF, then it's still martial law, no matter what you
no, please clarify something for me, Leo. When you said persons shouldn't get the impression that we are relaxing the laws and so forth, are you implying that community policing is suggestive of relaxing the laws?
No. I was saying that I don't want, just because we're suggesting strategies, I don't want persons to think that, you know, the strategies are going to work in a year or 6 months down the line. This time, where we are now in Jamaica, it's going to take 10, 15, a whole generation to change all crime, or to curb crime, for us to see the results. And I need your response on that. Do you believe that we have a strategy that we can come up with right now, and we see in 2 years crime gone down, 70%? Is that possible? Unless it's something like martial law. What is the strategy that we are going to use now that can bear fruits? Or are we saying to the people, listen, let's plan 20 years from now. Let's start small and rise up to 20 years so the next generation has a better life than we do?
If we had started in 1974, for example, when we instituted the Suppression of Crime Act in 1974, what if we had started with a different model, where we looked at, for example, the consistent enforcement of the laws that are on the books? What if we had looking at the sociological determinants of crime? These things are known, you know, they have been studied. The social determinants of crime are known. Look at the conditions under which people live, how they have to make a living, the survival, the precarious nature of living conditions in Jamaica and so forth. These are kind of things that nurture crime and so forth, you know. So
why did it get this bad? Why did it get this bad?
Because we go back to the point that Senator started out, you know, when you look at the economic model, and then you look at the levels of inequality in the society, it is extremely skewed. Jamaica has one of the highest levels of inequality when you look at the Gini coefficient as a measure of inequality. So when you have those kinds of variables in a society, you invariably are going to have antisocial behavior. It follows. So when the economic model is one which is iniquitous, and you have a marginalized set of persons who intergenerationally are marginalized. So if you don't address those factors in the society, and then now this has to take time, and it has to take a philosophical commitment to uplift people, because it has been said that, you know, a job is one of the greatest antidotes against crime, but it is not jobs where you don't have a livable wage. And so
let me ask.
The economic model is a big part of the problem.
Let me ask, Senator, why did it get this bad? I mean, because there was a time when it wasn't this bad. Or did, who caused this?
Any problem left unchecked will fester, including just a cut on your toe. You might end up lose your foot. So what we have done, as I've said, is to continuously fight criminals and not realizing that as you move criminal one, 7 new criminals come in. I'll give you a simple example. They have concluded that unattached youths are the major recruiting pool for criminal activity. What has been the serious effort to attach youth other than a 6 weeks football competition in the hotspots every year, once a year? So if you have no serious effort, I recommended recently that all 7th and 8th graders should be a part of a uniform corps, whether it is cadet, scout, girls guides. They should be a part of a uniform course so that they can understand discipline and stuff like that, but so that they can be attached, that all schools should have multiplicity of clubs and clubs option for which every student should at least have 2 days so they can feel attached. There's no, if you say that they're unattached, meaning they have nothing that they feel associated to, is the problem. We have not done anything to reduce that. We have also found that single parent homes are one of the leading contributors to criminal activity, partially because of the lower levels of income available for the child's general development. 47% single parent occurrence in Jamaica. The world average is less than 18%. So if it is that you have found that single parent is one of the contributors to criminal activity, what have we done to reduce the single parent occurrence or the single parent experience? So if it is that we are not doing anything to mitigate against these negatives, then I can't see how we would expect for reductions to come about.
See, it comes back to my point, Leo,
Yes.
and Senator. The different organs of the state, countries are governed through effective institutions, Yes. And some of the institutions that are to be significant contributors to the common good and the upliftment of our country, they're not working. They're either under-resourced or they are marginalized or things like that. So we have dysfunctionalities in significant key areas. We have dysfunctionalities. And what we tend to do, instead of fixing things, we create new things. Prime Minister is now muting a Ministry of Peace and those kind of, and that type of thing. Why not make what exists works? Government is not working, and the organs of the state, they are not working effectively. That is where the policymakers and the parliamentarians must devote their energies and efforts to make the organs of the different systems of the body and the different systems in an internal combustion engine, going back to those 2 analogies, make them work.
Okay. While you're at it, we are at 9:07, and it's a very captivating conversation. We have to wrap up now, but I'm going to give each of you something to a thought. I'm going to give you 1 minute to say, give your last thought on what we've discussed tonight. Doc, Paul Ivey, just wrap it up in 1 minute, and I'll do the same with you, Senator.
The primary purpose why governments are instituted among men is to create order, public order, and for the common good. And if we don't have that, and it is something that has been elusive in Jamaica, the effectiveness of government. And that has been eluding Jamaica from a long time. We are now in our 61st year of independence. And I've lived in Jamaica all my life. I was born just after independence. And I have not seen effective governance in my lifetime in Jamaica. And that is what we need. When Paul O'Neill became the head of Alcoa, he said he was going to focus on safety in the company. And everybody laughed at him because they didn't realize that focusing on safety meant that all the other areas of the company had to be working properly for it to be a safe environment. If we do not start with good governance and effective governance arrangements, we will not get out of this quagmire that we have found ourselves as a country.
Thank you so much for that. Senator.
Yeah, I mean, the arguments made are sufficient. The role, the reason for effective government is clear. We need a system in place that allows for our people to have an opportunity, a legitimate chance of making it in the world. And what we have been offering is not that opportunity. What we have been offering, unfortunately, is a kind of a continuous plaster or continuous band-aid with no serious effort to say the next generation will not be worse. I have lived 42 years, and I can say every decade, it seemed to me that our general national experience have deteriorated. And until someone is willing to say no more, I don't want to see where we would be. And using Westmoreland as a proxy, I'm from, they had I used to go to Westmoreland in the summer of 1920, we should have been 21 years ago. Westmoreland was like Portland. Look what Westmoreland is today. And so if you use that as a proxy, imagine if all our parishes deteriorate at an equal rate over 20 years. Haiti is not far from our doorsteps if we do not cauterize what we're doing and where we're at currently.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for this evening. It's a wonderful conversation. I hope we can get you on another evening, Senator. It's been my pleasure having you, and we're looking forward to some other time. Paul, thank you so much for this evening, and you guys have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Leo. Senator, good to be with you here, and I hope we converse in another space.
Huh?
I'm telling Leo I'll see him for homecoming.
All right, I will. Yes, sir.